The New Orleans Saints have a very crowded linebacker room, but what fifth-round rookie Jaylan Ford adds is uniquely valuable. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I'm your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode, we're continuing our breakdowns of the New Orleans Saints incoming rookie draft class, now looking at Texas Longhorns linebacker Jaylan Ford. We're going to get to some of the things that you want to see improve in his game, but why the speed concerns might topple at the next level. We'll also take a look at his IQ, which of course is absolutely unparalleled and something that I think is very, very special about this player. We're going to lead it all off by taking a look at a slammed linebacker room and what Jaylan Ford brings to it, what his immediate impact might look like. We got all that coming up for you today on another episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day, and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on today's episode, we are brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I admit it, I've got a competitive side, and that side loves Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist to the classic Monopoly that you already know and love. So join your friends and sign up. Download today over at Monopoly Go, which you can find for free on the App Store and Google Play. So when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, they have a very crowded linebacker room. They've got 3 guys that are already like bona fide starters in their system, another 4 guys to go behind that, another guy that's kind of an unproven but could potentially surprise, and then 2 new additions to the room. So they've got a very populated room of about 10 linebackers right now. And so I wanted to kind of take a look to start us off to figure out where exactly Jaylan Ford fits in as he's coming in as the 6'1", 240-pound rookie coming out of the Texas Longhorns, and what it is that he brings that's unique to everybody else. Because the big thing that I'm going to highlight here is that there are not a lot of guys that you look at and go, hey, that could be a future middle linebacker that's calling the shots, that's communicating on defense, all those things on this roster. That is until Jaylan Ford showed up. His communication is something we're going to be talking a lot about when we get to our next part of the show, where we break down all of the things that feel pro-ready about the player. But man, when you just look at what the rest of this linebacker room looks like, it feels crowded, but it still feels like Jaylan Ford's path is pretty clear in terms of what it is that he has to offer. Let's start at the top of the position group. Now that I've told you what I think is special about Jaylan, let's look at the top of the position group here. Your 3 starters, your bona fide guys. Demario Davis, longtime starter since he joined the New Orleans Saints back in 2018. Nothing changing there. Pete Werner, of course, the draft pick from a few years ago, second-round guy. He's a guy that comes in and has had some solid years, but overall has been a little inconsistent. And so if he can pick up the consistency while he has continued to add the playmaking ability, but do it more consistently, then I think he'll solidify a little bit more. But if he doesn't, Willie, the free agent addition that the New Orleans Saints brought in this offseason, will absolutely be a playmaker that pushes for starts, that pushes for snaps. And so I think there you've got your cemented veteran leader of the defense, cemented veteran leader of the team in Demario Davis. You've got a starter in Pete Werner who's holding on, but could get a stronger foothold with consistency. And then you've got the newcomer in Willie that's a playmaker ready to take some snaps. And look, you can get all 3 of these guys on the field at the same time now. The NFL offenses are shifting to a little bit more of those 2-back systems, which means 3 linebackers would be out there for against those base sets with your base defense. So now having 3 linebackers is again very important in NFL defenses, and the New Orleans Saints are kind of ahead of the curve on this. But when it comes to third down, and you can get Demario Davis and Willie out there, and you get the speedy coverage guys, then sometimes that might be preferable to certain matchups, as opposed to other matchups where a third down of 2 linebackers and the pairing being Pete Werner and Demario Davis might serve. So you have the versatility that you need to be able to match up well against what the offense on the opposite side is deploying. You got 3 kind of solid, experienced now, versatile kind of depth guys, that can add in and have immediate impacts over on special teams. Nephi Sewell, who actually ended up becoming last year's strong side linebacker, right? Which that position's now open because he's coming back from injury, leg injury, unlikely to be ready for camp. We'll see what happens in terms of what his timeline looks like for the beginning of the season. But that's part of the reason why Willie Gay steps in, because even if Willie Gay isn't pushing Pete Werner, he's taking some Sam linebacker snaps. It's what he played when he first got into the league for Kansas City. Then you got DeMarco Jackson, who's a special teams contributor, and I still believe has a lot of growth potential. Monty Rice, who's a special teamer and can also bring you some veteran depth, some experience there. Khaleke Hudson, same thing, special teamer, veteran depth, right? So that's kind of that class of like veteran players, some of which have been in the system, some of which haven't. Then we get to Anthony Orji, who is a little bit unknown, a little bit unproven, hasn't gotten a lot of opportunity. They're bringing him back on the reserve future deal. So he'll be at training camp. He gets an automatic invite to camp and all those things. We'll see what he develops into over time. Then you get the two newcomers, Jaylan Ford, who we just talked about out of Texas. Special teams is probably his initial impact, but goodness, his ability to communicate really does have and give you a lot of potential for growth, a ton of potential for growth. So that's something we're going to be watching with Jaylan Ford. I say this all the time about draft prospects, and I'll say it again a ton for Jaylan Ford, for Christian Boyd, for Josiah Aziram as we round out the draft class here over the next few episodes. In order for you to develop, you have to check a certain number of boxes. You have to check the box that you can be dependable, that you're determined, that you're intelligent, that you have sort of the mold, right? So that could be prototypical mold, all that. You have to have the mentality, all of those things. You can check all those boxes. It doesn't mean that you're going to develop into an NFL starter. We're not talking Pro Bowl. We're not talking All Pro. We're not going crazy, right? But to develop into an NFL starter, you have to check those boxes. And I think some teams would say more, right? But that doesn't mean that everybody that checks those boxes gets to that level, that starter level. But if you want to get there, you got to check those boxes. Jaylan Ford checks all those boxes. The Saints also added an undrafted free agent out of South Dakota State University, played with other schools as well before then, Nebraska, Isaiah Stallberg, who comes in as starting his career as a safety, having transitioned to linebacker, special teams, versatile, all the things, like kind of checks those boxes for you. But I think the thing that makes Jaylan Ford so special in this very, very slammed room, right? Slammed as in crowded room, is just his growth potential based on the boxes that he checks as an intelligent player, as a player with good instincts, and as a player who is determined to develop. You have to have all those charges if you want to take your next step. Jaylan Ford has all those charges. Now let's see if he takes that next step. The benefit for Jaylan Ford is that he gets to learn immediately behind Demario Davis. He gets to learn from Pete Werner and Willie Gay, who recently made the transition to the NFL. And of course, the New Orleans Saints have managed for a second year in a row, somehow, some way, to retain linebackers coach Michael Hodges. That's only going to last for so long, okay? Eventually, he's going to get that defensive coordinator spot, just like Mike Nolan did years ago. Right now, though, Jaylan Ford gets the opportunity to develop under a linebacker coach that has consistently and endlessly and without fail developed talent. And I think that that's something that I'm really, really excited to see Jaylan Ford fit into. Now, what is it exactly about Jaylan Ford that gives you the mold that makes him believe that he could develop in that way? That's what we're going to break down next, because we got so much more for you here on today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and our official sports betting partners here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Right now, it's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home some big winnings of your own, because right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets by simply winning your first $5 bet. That then gets you $150 in bonus bets that you can then spend on spreads, money lines, player props, and much more. You can use that for put a vote down for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Of course, Caleb Williams, the Chicago Bears quarterback, is the favorite, but Jaden Daniels not far behind with the third best odds, right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. You can bet on your Defensive Rookie of the Year as well. Of course, Dallas Turner leading the way in that race. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to make every playoff moment count. Go and check it out today over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, family. Look, sometimes it's different things that make a player special at the next level. Their ability as a passer for a quarterback, the hands of a wide receiver, or the route running of a wide receiver, the coverage ability, the speed of a cornerback. For Jaylan Ford, it's his mind. It's the IQ that makes him so incredibly special. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube channel, the first national sports 24/7 stream available on YouTube, where you can get all the insight from the local experts on the biggest stories around sports from the people that know those stories the best. You find it on YouTube as well as on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. So I want to be very careful here, because I think that there are times where when we say good things in media about a draft prospect, that it can be received as in we're all saying this player is a bona fide all-pro, this player is a bona fide Pro Bowler, he's going to be the best player that you've ever seen, that he's going to take over for this player, that player, whatever it might be. When I say that Jaylan Ford is special, I'm talking about Jaylan Ford is special in Jaylan Ford's own right. What he then does with that at the next level is entirely up to him and the opportunities that he's provided by the team. But I will say this, he is somebody that is special to watch. I watched a ton of his game tape. It's the Longhorns. There's a lot of game tape out there that's accessible that you can find. And I think that there are a couple of things that you can see from him that immediately tell you that he does have something special about him as a football player. That does not mean that he's going to be an all-pro. It does not mean that he's going to be a Pro Bowler. It doesn't mean that he's going to start a game. We have to see where all that goes. So don't miscommunicate. Don't mistranslate what I'm communicating here. But he is a special player. Here's why. The football IQ that he shows on the field consistently outplays the athleticism of the players on the other side of the ball that he is defending against. That is special. He's not the fastest guy. Okay, 4.7, 140. The biggest concern you're going to hear about him, we're going to talk about it a little bit here in a moment, is going to be his speed. That's what you're going to hear from everybody. But his ability to understand play flow, read the breaks of offensive linemen off of their first step, understand what a team's tendencies are. His study is ridiculous. And you see it over and over again. There are times where it looks like the only people that know what play is about to be run are the offense and Jaylan Ford. You can see it all over his tape. His football IQ and his ability to recognize the play that's developing in front of him, and then what's called click and close. Click and close is effectively, if you've ever played Madden, read and react, right? Your ability to be able to process something and then act on it. But the reason why I like click and close over read and react is that, as you might know, I struggled with this as a 2.6 GPA student in high school. There's a big difference between reading and reading comprehension. Those are not the same thing. And it took me a very long time to get comfortable understanding that. Grad school, probably. So when I look at Jaylan Ford, what I look at with him is there is no disconnect or very little disconnect between his ability to read what an offense is doing and understand what the heck to do about it. Those are two very different things. You can be a linebacker, a safety, a defensive end, a defensive tackle, cornerback. You can be the best one on your team, athletics-wise. But if you can't understand and translate what an offense across you is doing and what that means for you, you're going to be wrong a lot. And all that athleticism will be for nothing. This is where Jaylan Ford separates himself. He is athletic. He's quick. He's not fast. But he can read. He can click. He can close. That for me is really, really important. Part of the click and close stuff that you'll see sometimes is when there's a swing pass out to the outside, he's already there to make the tackle. He's already there to make the stop because he's not getting lost with the hubbub that's happening in front of him. Instead, he's watching his guy. He keeps his eyes up. This is a big thing. Don't be worried about the guy that's running at you if your assignment is the guy that's running away from you, right? If you're too worried about the guy that's running at you, you're going to lose the guy that's running away from you, and then he's running away from everybody before the play is all said and done. The other way that you see it is his ability to shoot the gaps in the run game. Okay. So when we're talking about shooting the gaps, what I'm mostly talking about is between the tackles. And you see it over and over and over and over again with him. The Saints put a highlight reel of his plays on Instagram. And you can see, I think it's the very first one, his ability to see what's developing in the backfield, understand where the ball is going from the mesh point being that sort of awkward moment or potentially awkward moment where a quarterback and running back both have their hands on the ball during a handoff, right? We call that the mesh point. And so at that point, especially in college, you have to be very aware. Is the quarterback keeping or is he letting it go and is the running back taking the football? He very rarely seems to be confused by this. He always seems to make the right play with the tape that I've watched. So I think that goes a long way for him too. The other thing is his ability to be able to drop back in coverage between the hashes, okay, between the hash marks. So we're talking about a middle of the field prowler underneath. A lot of his interceptions throughout his collegiate career have come in the red zone when there's a little bit less space to cover, but it's because of the fact that he is athletic enough to be able to go up from the second level and get his hands on a football. You'll also see a lot of his interceptions happening. Those kind of curious interceptions Drew Brees would throw every now and then, to where he's having this incredible game. He's 20 for 21 or whatever ridiculous Drew Brees thing he's doing that particular week. And then all of a sudden in the third quarter or the fourth quarter or whatever, he just throws a pass directly to a middle linebacker in the middle of the field, right? Like those types of plays. Jaylan Ford is that linebacker. Kind of Deion Jones-ish in that way, but Deion Jones just packed a lot more speed and all that, especially in the man-to-man game and everything. But Jaylan Ford's IQ when covering a zone in the middle of the field allows him to be able to get where he needs to get to be able to go up there and be able to make a play. And then the last thing that I'll mention here in terms of like this big quality that I like about him is just his ability to communicate. The Saints really only have two guys that have ever really handled on their roster right now the green dot duties. The green dot duty is literally a green dot sticker that goes in the back of a helmet that indicates that helmet has a communication set in it, which means that he has the ability to communicate with the rest of the defense up until a certain point in the play clock and communicate with the sideline up until a certain point with the play clock. Jaylan Ford is now a third guy behind Demario Davis and Pete Werner who have that experience with the team that walks in with that experience already, handling those duties from a long and successful career with the Texas Longhorns. I dig that as well. I think that there's a big misconception about who Jaylan Ford is expected to be. And that's what I want to break down next, because we're still far from done here on today's episode of Locked On Saints. I want to take a look at what it is that maybe the expectations are too expectation-y around him about, as well as why the speed concerns could topple here in the NFL. We got that coming up for you as we continue on breaking down an impressive prospect here in Jaylan Ford out of Texas as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. Look, we got to talk more about Monopoly Go, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, Mirage, you've already talked about Monopoly Go so much. But look, there's just so much fun stuff in this game. I told you about the stickers that you can collect, right? And all the cool stuff that you can get, the prizes that you can get from collecting those and sharing them with your friends and trading them and all those other things, a little pocket monster action there. But have I told you about the cool new playing pieces that you can get for the board? So not only are you able to play on a whole bunch of different types of boards and a bunch of different worlds, but now you can also customize your pieces as well for a little bit of individual flair with the way that you play Monopoly Go. It always feels so new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments that include some really cool challenges in mini games like digging for treasure, robot pachinko, and even more. Massive multipliers for everything you win or even rent frenzies. There's a ton for you to check out. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free today on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. We've already seen some swollen expectations around some of the New Orleans Saints Day 3 draft picks. Spencer Rattler could become the next starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. We'll pump the brakes for now. Bub Means can be the next Marcus Colston. Let's pump the brakes for now. Jaylan Ford can be the successor to Demario Davis. Let's pump the brakes for now. These players could achieve those things. But the expectations don't need to be so heavy for right now. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day here on the show. Don't forget, we are your team every day. So on Monday, we'll get you all caught up with the biggest stories around the New Orleans Saints in case anything goes down over the weekend. Otherwise, we'll also continue on our trajectory and our sort of pathway here of breaking down all the different rookie prospects for the New Orleans Saints. So Monday, we pick up with Christian Boyd and keep you up to date with all the biggest stories as well. Look, I think that expectations can be fun. I think that expectations can be something that drives, determination and motivation from players. But those are about the individual's standards, the individual's expectations of themselves. It's why I'm always very careful about, not trying to overhype expectations around somebody before we've even seen them on the field. I talked about how there are things about Jaylan Ford that makes him special. But I'm not saying that this guy is going to be an all-pro or a Pro Bowler or anything like that. But I also don't want to put a ceiling on what it is that he's able to achieve. But one of the things that I think a lot of people are leaning into right now is this idea that Jaylan Ford could potentially be the next Demario Davis. Is that true? Yes. Everything is within the realm of possibility. But does that have to be the expectation right now? No. The thing that you're looking for from Jaylan Ford at this moment is he going to be able to contribute on special teams? And can he show you the abilities on the defensive side that might push for some opportunities to hit the field should there be injuries ahead of him? And it doesn't need to be more than that for right now. It can develop over time. And so what I want to look at now are some of the things that might hold Jaylan Ford back in terms of expectations for right now and how he can kind of let's call it circumvent, right? We're not talking about him just going around and ending in the same place. We're talking about him getting around all of these expectations and getting around all of these things that might be, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase, limitations. I hate using words like that because we don't know if he's actually limited. We're working off of some game tape that he hasn't ever been in an NFL facility. And let's see what happens when he gets into an NFL facility with NFL level players and NFL level developers around him, right? And see where he's able to go from there. But I just want to kind of pump the brakes and give the guy a little bit of grace here in that, yeah, 5th round pick, give him some opportunity, let him go out there and impress you. Don't let him go out there and disappoint you on some stuff that he never tried to put in anybody's mind in the first place. One of the things that I think is the big concern, around Jaylan Ford is his speed. 4.71 40-yard dash, and it shows up on tape, all right? There are certain times to where, I talked about him shooting the gaps in between the tackles, where sometimes if a running back is getting the outside edge, that he might struggle to get there. That's where the IQ comes in, though, because if he's able to kind of click and close and get a little bit of a head start on that, he might be faster to the ball carrier than somebody that's actually faster than him, but has a slower processing speed, right? You can be somebody that's guarding the paint in basketball that can jump 47 inches. I know I'm being ridiculous, 42 inches. And so you can leave your feet after the dunker has left their feet at the dunker spot and still be able to catch him on the way down as you're coming up and knock the ball out. You don't have to be the first one to jump. In fact, oftentimes you don't want to be the first one to jump unless you got mad, hang time. And so when I look at Jaylan Ford, I think, okay, well, yeah, he maybe doesn't have the speed to get there if he's operating at the same processing speed as the linebacker next to him. But if he's processing earlier and he's getting the, again, for lack of a better phrase, head start in charging to the spot where that player, ball carrier, pass catcher, or whatever, is trying to get, then he might still make it there. But the speed would be a concern if the processing isn't on par for his typical standard. So it's going to challenge his sideline to sideline value and ability, particularly in man coverage. Can he lock horns with an athletic, quick, fast tight end and not, end up trailing behind on an over route, not end up trailing behind on a seam route attacking upfield? Those are going to be the questions that he's got to answer. And then the other tricky part becomes, if he does fall behind, can he find a way to still make the play despite his 6'1" frame up against a 6'6" tight end? Again, you don't have to jump at the same time. You can jump after and knock it out on the way down. Just get your hand where his hands are. So challenging the sideline to sideline ability of a player does also effectively challenge that player's ability to be a 3-down linebacker. We're talking about a 3-down linebacker. We're talking about somebody that can be out there for those early rundowns on first and second downs when they're further away from their ability to convert a first down. And then if you can keep them far enough from getting comfortable within a range to convert a first down on third down, then you got to prove that you're a third down linebacker that's able to cover. And so that's where maybe the speed stuff comes in again, right? Sideline to sideline ability in terms of being able to take away the edges in the run game or in the behind the line of scrimmage or short passing game is one piece. The other piece is, can you be that 3-down linebacker that can cover in man coverage on third down when the rest of the defense is sending safeties or a safety or another linebacker on a blitz. So you got to be able to drop back and be able to take somebody away as opposed to maybe some zone blitzes and stuff like that you might see in like a Brian Flores defense. That's going to be a big question. The Saints love to man up on defense. Is he going to be able to do that and have the speed to stay in the play? I'm not saying that I doubt he can. I'm just listing what it is that he'll need to prove once he gets into mini camps and training camp and all this other stuff. The reason why I think that the speed concerns could topple at the next level is because of that mind, that brain, that thing that makes him special, the IQ, the instinct. Because if his instincts are correct, he doesn't have to be fast. He's just got to be first. Sometimes that makes all the difference. And other times, the other thing that I would mention here too, just to wrap us up, is that you don't have to be a 3-down linebacker in the NFL anymore. You can be a 2-down linebacker. You can be a guy that comes in on first and second down in the run game and contributes and helps, and then maybe comes in on third down as a pass rusher, helping to supplement a pass rush off the edge. So there could be some interesting things that you do with him in that case because he is a good pursuit player. He chooses the right angles. He doesn't end up over pursuing. He's a solid tackler. He's a reliable tackler. Those are all things that you'd like to see a guy that's rushing the passer from the second level do. So he might become a 3-down linebacker in certain situations that don't require him to cover because it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11, whatever. It's an obvious passing down situation. And you say, Jaylan, go do your thing, bro. Go rush that passer. And then he becomes a 3-down linebacker in a way that's unconventional, air quotes, but still really, really important and still very, very valuable. So that's the way that I look at Jaylan Ford, man. I'm excited about him. I can't wait to see the way that he develops over time. When you have a brain like that is so ridiculously smart, you don't even have to talk to the player. Now, it's reinforced when you talk to Jaylan Ford, that's for sure. But you can just watch him play and go, gosh, that guy's smart. Good place to start. Appreciate you very much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU. Make sure you stay locked in with Locked On Louisiana. Appreciate you very much as always, making us part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.